There's this ancient way of looking at the human experience, and it says that the mind controls the body, but it's the breath that controls the mind.
Okay.
So as you were saying there, by moving our lungs in very simple ways, the brain starts to pay attention to the movement of the lungs. The brain is inundated with trillions of messages all the time, but it prioritizes messages from the lungs over nearly everything, because if the lungs get into difficulty or stop working, the whole thing shuts down. We're finished. So we can use that to our advantage. So coherent breathing is a really, really simple way of breathing that's evident in nearly all breathing traditions like yoga, martial arts, qigong, meditation. It's breathing in for a count of four. So breathing in for two, three, four, and breathing out for two, three, four.
Niall O'Murchu, welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. I was looking up your bio this morning, and it says Niall O'Murchu, one of Ireland's leading wellness and breathwork experts. Very impressive. With over 23 years of experience helping improve mental, emotional, physical well-being. It says you're a level 3 Wim Hof Method Instructor, the highest possible certification, and the first Irish person to teach at the Wim Hof Academy. As I was looking over this morning, I thought to myself, you know, if you haven't heard, as a listener, if you haven't heard of Wim Hof, if you haven't heard of breathwork, if you hadn't heard of cold exposure in the last decade, you have to have been living under a rock, because it's become like rock and roll. I mean, it's everywhere. But still, there are people that scoff it a little bit. How did you? I mean, did you grow up wanting to be a breathwork instructor? How did this all start for you?
Um, so speaking of growing up, I grew up in a household that was very open to lots of things. My parents traveled a lot. My parents were kind of old hippies, or they still are old hippies. So there was yoga in the house, there was meditation in the house. This is just kind of
Wow.
normal kind of stuff for us. But of course, as a teenager, you rebel against all of that, you know. So for me, my first real obsession was basketball. I wanted to be a professional basketball player, and so many things. You know, when you're striving for excellence, when you're pursuing excellence, you ask yourself all these questions about it. You know, how can I improve my performance, or why do I feel under pressure in certain circumstances? So that always led me to ask those questions, and it kind of brought up an interest in the mind, and how it works, and the body and the mind and the connection, and the breath and the mind and the body. So over the years, that, you know, the basketball led to bigger questions, and that led me to martial arts, into yoga, which of course is all about breathing. And you know, so for me, the questions and the passion for understanding was always there. It kind of brought me to some very interesting places, and then eventually, about 10 years. So I started teaching a long time ago, but about 10 years ago, it started to move from being a thing I did as well as working, to being the whole thing, to being the livelihood. It went from being the passion to being the livelihood.
It reminds me of you're a bit younger than I am. Sorry, a lot younger than I am. I apologize. I remember watching the Late Late Show, and for our non-Irish listeners, it's a huge TV show in Ireland, and there was a very famous host there for many many years called Gay Byrne. I'm sure you remember Gay Byrne. And so I'm watching it one night, and the founder of Ballygowan came on. Ballygowan, which is now, I don't know if, I assume it's still a very very famous water brand, but he was a young guy who had come up with this idea to use the spring water and bottle it in Ballygowan. I remember watching this, I think it was in the 80s. And I remember Gabriel kind of going, so I can go to my tap and pour water and drink it, but you're going to put it in a bottle with a label and charge me for drinking it and sell it back to me. So I remember it was kind of a bit hilarious, except you watched it evolve as a business over the years, you know, and you kind of go, who's laughing now? So I'm wondering, I'm wondering when your business is teaching people how to breathe, do you get a little bit of I know how to breathe.
Oh, so there's a kind of couple of kind of levels to that. Firstly, you get people much less so nowadays saying, "Oh, I know how to breathe," because I think people are in different stages of their life. They face different pressures, and if people are feeling pressures like stress or anxiety, and they start to feel overwhelmed by them, then they start looking for ways to dealing with that. We're dealing with that, and that can be in sport, that can be in the boardroom, that can be at home. And very quickly, if people look up the best ways of dealing with stress, breathing comes up. It's the fastest, most effective way to deal with stress. So I think that kind of, that questioning, that skepticism, that healthy skepticism about it is far less common than it was a few years ago. When I first started, a friend of mine, a great businessman, he was saying to me, look, I didn't want to say it to you years ago, but you were trying to teach people how to breathe, and it's free and people know how to do it. But I think the more we start to think about breathing, and it was like a lost art that has come back again. The more time we spend focusing on our breathing, the better everything gets. The better our breathing gets, the better our health gets, the better our concentration, our mood, our focus, our sleep. Everything improves the more we focus on our breathing. And I think that now is becoming more of something that people are aware of than a few years ago. But I definitely had those moments like the Ballygown fella of
Yeah,
people like saying to me, "What are you doing?" But hopefully, like the Ballygown fella has a similar end as well.
yeah. I think it's just very interesting that you say people people come to these things because of challenges they face in their life, and it's interesting. Almost everyone I mean over the decades that I've had an interest in studying these things, and when on the podcast, I mean almost everyone comes to whatever their expertise is via challenge. But it's interesting you say people are under pressure, stress, or whatever, and they go and they Google what's the best way to do it, and the answer is breath. And you kind of go, haven't I been doing that already? So that suggests that so two questions there is um why is the breath so why is the breath so impactful in dealing in those situations, and people are already breathing, so what is it that they're doing wrong, or yeah, what is it that people are doing wrong, and why is the breath so powerful?
So I think you had about 7 questions in there actually. So
Great,
I'll
great.
unpack them as we go.
If you can answer them all, happy days.
um,
Let me know when you're done.
Question number one. Now, so I think you're touching on some very broad questions and some really huge topics, and they're very important. So let's have a think about firstly. So our breathing reflects how we feel. So if a person is feeling very stressed, their breathing tends to be too quick, too shallow. They might even be holding their breath. A lot of people hold their breath when they feel pressure. So that's what's happening to us when we're feeling pressure. And we feel pressure all the time. It's a part of being a human. But over prolonged periods of time, go on, do you want to jump in there?
I was going to say, is it fair to say that often in those situations, these things are happening, but people are unaware of them?
Yeah.
I mean, you might say to someone, "You're holding your breath," and they go, "I don't," unless, I mean, you're sure. I'm very aware of it. I'm sure you're very aware of it because we've been trained in the awareness is how the importance of the breath. But I think many people, just because the first thing they did was breathe,
Mm-hmm.
I think they get into stressful situations and they might necessarily notice those changes that are clear as day to you.
Yeah. And they might notice them honestly for decades. So
Yes, yeah,
this way
ever.
of breathing or ever, our body, our nervous system is always learning again how to breathe. So every day it's learning to breathe again. So if we are constantly feeling pressure, constantly feeling this kind of difficult situations, we start to breathe like that slowly over time, and that becomes our way of breathing. So a person could be breathing in a really shallow way without even thinking about it or noticing it, as you said, and this has a really detrimental effect on their health. Now, if we take a step back and look at it again, how we breathe is how we feel. So in moments of really kind of calmness in their life, they might be in a difficult situation, they come home, something happens, and they feel that they can unwind and they feel calmer. If they pause there for a second and listen to their breathing, they've noticed that their breathing was soft, gentle, light, even even quite soft, as I said.
But you, sorry to jump in, but you said something earlier. You said about people under stress, their breathing becomes shallow, and yet I'm sure you've noticed this as well. But sometimes when I'm in a deep meditation, my breath becomes so fine, so
Disappears.
yeah, my breath becomes so shallow. But yet in a stressful situation, you also. So I'm wondering, how do you define shallow then? Because in
So
stress, also people can hold on to their breath. And
there's often a rapid pace to the breathing in stress. If you listen to someone in stress, it might be shallow. Like when you're in deep meditation, it's nearly like the breathing stops. Like in really deep meditation, it's nearly like it stops. Now, of course, it doesn't.
no,
But in fight or flight, in emergency, it's rapid breathing. The body's breathing quite rapidly in order to give us this sense of stress, to give us
but
this
they're
energy
small breaths. Yeah,
like that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So the beauty of it is that we don't have to think about our breathing. It happens all the time. So about 20,000 times a day, our breathing happens automatically. And it becomes fast, it becomes slow, it becomes deep, all
So
these
twenty
pressures.
thousand times a day. I'm sure you know the maths. How many breaths is that a minute?
Oh,
Or do you know? I
I'll
try. I
leave you.
assumed you know
I'll
the
leave you
number.
to do that calculation.
Yeah. Okay.
But whatever that number is, ideally, if we're breathing about 4, 5, 6 breaths a minute, that's where the body is in this coherent state. The majority of
Yeah.
people are breathing in a much faster way. So really, the breathing is like a mirror. If we were to look into that mirror, the breathing would show us how we're feeling, what's going on deep in the body, and that reflects on what's going on in the mind as well. Now, the good news is that we have, with practice, control over how we breathe. So let's say we're in a really difficult situation, we are feeling threatened by something, our breathing is out of control. In that moment, we have a choice. We can decide if we have the skills to focus on our breathing, just to even listen to it. And in that focus and listening, the breathing begins to slow down. And then if we have a little bit more experience, we can start to consciously slow the breathing down, focusing on the exhales, for example. And in those moments, then the heart rate starts to slow down. The body starts to move into this part of the nervous system where we feel safe, and then eventually we feel calm. And this is where the massive health benefits are from breathing. Because when we are breathing in a way where we feel safe and calm again, then the body can start to rebuild itself. Then it can start to restore itself. So even if a person is in a highly difficult life, let's say they have a job that puts them under pressure all the time, even if they take 5 or 10 minutes when they get back to where they work or wherever it is, and they just do some breathing for 5 or 10 minutes, that brings them out of emergency back into this place where the nervous system is calm again. And that is essential for our health because when we're in survival mode, the body is pushing all the resources into dealing with whatever the pressure is. It's not focusing on rebuilding. So we need these moments during our day where we focus on our breathing just a little bit. And that brings us down out of this fight or flight and allows the body then to restore itself. Otherwise, our immunities in fight or flight, it's like our immunity is kind of turned off. I'm sure people have had those situations over maybe a few weeks where things have been hectic and then they get sick at the end of the 2 weeks. So a little bit of breathing is so important by reducing the levels of stress and anxiety, moving us down into the part of the nervous system where we feel safe and we feel calm again. And that enables us to rebuild and to restore ourselves. And then our health improves, then our sleep improves, then our focus improves.
You talked about this 4 to 6 breaths a minute, and I want to talk to you a little bit about coherent breathing, but I just want to catch something else before it slips from my mind. Um, this this we call it slow, shallow breathing, whatever you want to call it. This 4, 5, 6 breaths a minute, where we drop in, and if we practice this, calm emerges in our mind and in our body. So, I'm is that then our natural state? And if that is our natural state, where did that change for us? I mean, what was the transition? Why, if that's our natural state, why don't we all just naturally breathe that way? I don't know. Do children breathe that way? Is there a point where you? I mean, we all do. We learn a bad habit somewhere. I know we're unaware of it. So yeah, you say you grew up with hippie parents, but maybe your parents weren't aware of this. Mine certainly weren't. So is there a lack of awareness, and is it something natural that at some stage goes off kilter, and now we need to take responsibility for it to realign it?
So I think when you talk about the natural state, I think we are built to be in two opposing states at different times.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
there's this great kind of story of the cave, you know. So our ancestors, when they were in the cave, we were safe, and our breathing was nice and relaxed, and our digestive system was working, and we were in this rest and digest phase of the nervous system. That's one state of the humankind. When we leave the cave and we're outside and we're immediately scanning for danger and we're hunting and gathering, or we're being hunted, our other state is this high awareness, high energy survival state. And we're also built to be like that for short bursts of time. So I think we exist in these two polar opposites, and you know, a spectrum in between that. I think maybe where we've gone a little bit awry is that people don't have the cave to return to as much anymore. They might be at home where they should be starting to unwind, but every time we pick this little thing up and we scroll, it starts to trigger the fight or flight. So it's just having this balance between high alert and deep rest. So that's one part. So I don't think it's a problem. We definitely shouldn't be absolutely calm all the time. That's
Yeah,
not
we
part of
need both. Yeah.
being. But back to the other part of your question was, you know, did something change along the lines? And I have four teenagers now, but I used to watch them when they were babies, and when we're small, we breathe in this beautiful way. It's called natural breathing. The belly expands, draws down the diaphragm. We breathe with our whole body, and the exhale is just a release. And you watch children very young, and they breathe with their whole body like that. And as they reach about 6 or 7, and as they become more aware of themselves and more aware of their surroundings, I'm sure if you have, you know, young people in your life as well, you'll see, and we also experience, you become more aware of what people say about you, what people, you know, the surrounding pressures. The more we start to feel external pressures, the more that
Mhm.
changes our breathing. So about 8 or 9 or 10 or 11, as we grow up, and we start to become more aware of our surroundings and our place in it, our breathing changes. And if that scenario is quite pushes us into a place where we feel threatened or stressed, our breathing can get a little bit tighter, a little bit higher in the chest, a little bit faster. Now we can come in and out of that, but for some people, that state of breathing quite quickly in a kind of stressed way can stay with them then for the rest of their life. It can stay with them
Yeah.
for 20 or 30 years. You know, when I'm teaching people to breathe now, often it's a return to breathing like we did, you know, but there's a reason, like we grow up, we have responsibilities, we have things to solve, we have places to go. So again, we need to exist within these two polar opposites, the action and the relaxation, you know, the survival and then the restoration as well. So there's nothing wrong with these bursts of difficult situations. We just need to learn the skill of being able to come back out of it. We have to come back out of it.
Yeah, we don't want to stay there. And I think that analogy of leaving the cave explains a lot, because I suppose if we go back thousands of years ago, we left in the hunter gatherer time. We left the cave to kill for food, and when you're doing something like that, whatever it is you're chasing, you do, you don't want to be in this calm rested state. You need to, your heightened senses, because of a very dangerous situation. But once you've killed your prey and you bring them back, um, and now I suppose naturally we would have dropped back into the rested state. Then we had our food, whatever, and we weren't surrounded by email, mobile phones, TVs, tablets, all. So we moved into a stiller environment. So I suppose that makes sense in saying that neither are wrong, but maybe we're overusing them now, because we're in a world of, we at that stage we were in a world of temporary stimulation, and now we're in a world of continuous stimulation. And a guest I interviewed just before you a couple of days ago, Dr. Michael Keane, and he's a neuroscientist, and I can't remember the expression he used, but something to the effect that you know our our minds haven't caught up with the mind we're using, and the body we're using. It hasn't, because the world changed so fast. Our minds just haven't caught up
Yeah.
with where we are now, because just things have changed so rapidly within such a short period of time. Maybe it's decades, maybe it's 100 years, but from an evolutionary standpoint, that is way too fast
Why is it
for
fast?
us to
Yeah.
adjust to a new environment.
Yeah. Like we are built to survive very harsh conditions. And that's what we've done for millions of years to get to this point where you and I can have this chat across the internet
Mm.
like this. So we are sitting in these bodies that are built like that and these brains that are built like that. And all of a sudden we've had these massive social changes. And it's going to take the human brain and the human body a long time to adjust to that. But I think there is a change also in our perception of this problem. I think people are trying to find a balance now with the level of distraction in their life. I think some people are realizing that they can't continuously live in a constantly distracted world. They need time back in the cave.
One of the things you also mentioned was how this can change for maybe in the teenage years, or maybe to 8, 9, 10, when we begin to move out of the childhood behavior, and we're moving into our teens towards adulthood, and we become aware of our environment and our breathing changes. Uh, so I suppose, as far as I'm aware, you've specifically studied this area of how it impacts on teenagers, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that, because it seems to me that it would be a really impactful um, intervention
Mhm.
to catch children at that age,
That-
and begin to train them in. I suppose two things. One is you label what's happening for them, so you identify, so they become aware of the shift that's happening, and you give them a skill, because when you're at that age, you don't know what's changing, and you don't have the skill to do anything about it, but no one around you has that skill. So you might talk about a little bit what you do there, because I think that could be really important.
Yeah, so we have a Breathwork Academy called the Blissful Breath Academy, and as part of that, we have worked with quite a few schools, secondary and primary schools, and we actually have a good few teachers who are by profession teachers, breathwork teachers who are also primary school or secondary school teachers. And really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get into the classrooms and also train the primary and secondary school teachers in these very simple, very effective ways of breathing that, as you say, help people to deal with these massive, massive changes that go on within themselves and around them. And what we've found over the last few years is when we're teaching adults, adults have so many hang-ups about, you know, is it the right thing to do? Am I doing it correctly? Does it work? All
Mm.
these things. What we found with teenagers and children is they just take to it so easily because it just helps them. They feel it helps them. And, so they need less of it. So, what we might say 10 minutes of breathing for an adult, like a minute or two of breathing with children and teenagers changes how they feel so quickly. And some of the schools that we've been in, the teachers have come back to us and said, we do a little bit of breathing at the start of the day, and the difference it makes for the rest of the day is unbelievable. The children are more content, they're calmer, they're able to focus more. And I think there is a change in the schools. Yoga is in schools, mindfulness is in schools. We're getting breath work into schools. And I think a lot of schools are very open to it because, again, I think my job becomes easier when there's a real need for it. And after
Mm.
COVID, many teachers are struggling with the effects of the isolation and things that happen to the children and teenagers. And it's still cropping up years after COVID. So they're looking for ways of dealing with this. And as well, it seems maybe it's not true, but it seems that the pressure on, say, teenagers for exams and things like that is also very high. So again, teachers are looking for simple tools that help them and the teenagers deal with it. So for us now, that's a big focus because, like you said, the future will be very bright when the children and teenagers of Ireland and the rest of the world have these very
Mm.
simple tools that they can use just to help them feel a little better. Because growing up is very difficult at times. And if they have a tool that helps them just come back down to themselves, and it's so empowering for them to think that, okay, this difficult thing is happening. I can focus on my exhale for 3 exhales and I feel better. That's hugely empowering for them because it gives them something in the midst of the pressure to hold on to.
Yeah, it's powerful. Um, I have three sons, that are adults now, and they all went to a rugby school, and one of them loved rugby, and the other two did not. Um, but the interesting thing was that after school every day, there was training was compulsory for an hour, compulsory. Now you didn't have to. Rugby was what the school was about, but if you didn't do rugby, you could train and you could do something else, but it was compulsory. School finished, and it was an hour. And I remember thinking to myself that it's a really powerful thing they're doing, because if you go to school, whatever age they were, and they went to school, I don't know, 12 or 13, it was secondary school, and you're in there until you're 17 years of age, and every day, 5 days a week, you train for an hour, you are creating this habit. And then you're 17, 18, you leave. Whatever you do, your likelihood is now, this is what I do. I train, I train consistently. And we know that exercise is the magic pill. It's a massive impact. And so when I was looking at this, I was thinking, like, the skill they're giving to these children going into the rest of life is massive. And I think this is something equally, or so not equally, even more powerful, because if you take kids through their schooling years and you teach them this skill, by the time they get to adults, they won't think about it anymore. They won't. It's just you'll have given them this incredibly powerful skill that that will transform them. I was blessed that when I was 17, 18 years of age, I learned meditation, and it transformed my life without question. It took me into a different path. So I'm not trying to sign everyone up for meditation, but it's similar. If you learn a skill like this, that skill is, I mean, it's enormously powerful.
Enormously powerful. And I think you touched on something very important there. There are many different practices that people can use. There's, say, as you said, meditation, breathing, whatever it might be. It's finding the kind of combination of things that suits the person. And, everyone is very, very different. And even when you were talking about training after school, training is breathing. Think of how
Yeah.
much breathing we do when we're training, and think of how aware of our breathing we become when we're training. Because when you're training really hard, if you're not watching your breath and paying attention to it, all of a sudden you're like totally out of breath, but you become aware of it. You try to control it.
Mm.
Everyone tries to control their breathing and training. So those skills, as you say, they're so very important. And that's why it's very promising that we're slowly and surely kind of getting into schools, and schools are looking more and more for this. And as you said in the sports, for me, it's like I don't really care why we get into the schools. Maybe it's for mental health, maybe it's for stress management, maybe it's for sports performance. It doesn't matter for me as long as we get in there and as long as we keep working with as many people as we can.
But the interesting thing is when you when fitness becomes a part of your life, and I cycle a lot, but when you become aerobically fit, your breathing quiets down. Like, the fitter you are, the lower your heart rate will be, and the less you will breathe. Which is interesting. It sounds the more your body moves towards a level of fitness and well-being, it will breathe less. Um, you mentioned, or we briefly mentioned, I wanted to get back to a coherent breathing there, because I've been a meditator for decades and decades, and my go-to was always, if I was stressed, and that could be physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, my go-to was meditation. And so meditation, you're resting, and I always felt like it would start up here and it would kind of, go down. I would rest my mind, my emotions, and the body would rest. So very, very powerful. However, when I discovered coherent breathing, it seemed to me that this was like, I'm going to say, a simpler method, because I would talk to people. I mean, I'm so passionate about meditation because I find it so difficult. And then you go, well, actually, if you learn coherent breathing, that's the body. And if you calm the body, guess what? Just like if you calm the mind, the body calms. If you do coherent breathing, the body calms and then the mind follows. So, but I find a lot of people haven't heard of coherent breathing because can you talk a little bit about what it is and how people might use it?
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. But I just want to touch on what you're saying there about meditation, for example. I love meditation, meditated for years, and it's like a wrestling match with the mind. I find it so difficult, and people find it difficult. But once they learn a very simple way of breathing, like coherent breathing, which we'll explain now in a second, loads of people have said to me, you know what, I find meditation very difficult. My mind runs away,
Yeah.
but I can do the breathing. And
Yes.
and in yoga philosophy, there's this ancient way of looking at the human experience, and it says that the mind controls the body, but it's the breath that controls the mind.
Okay.
So as you were saying there, by moving our lungs in very simple ways, the brain starts to pay attention to the movement of the lungs. The brain is inundated with trillions of messages all the time, but it prioritizes messages from the lungs over nearly everything, because if the lungs get into difficulty or stop working, the whole thing shuts down. We're finished. So we can use that to our advantage. So coherent breathing is a really, really simple way of breathing that's evident in nearly all breathing traditions like yoga, martial arts, qigong, meditation. It's breathing in for a count of four. So breathing in for 2, 3, 4, and breathing out for 2, 3, 4. So it's roughly an inhale for 6 seconds and roughly an exhale for 6 seconds. So it's 5 breaths per minute. That's all it is. So it's in for 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. And the reason this simple way of breathing, and we just breathe like this for maybe 5 minutes or so, or even 10 minutes, or when we're teaching more advanced, you can go to maybe 30, 40 minutes, is people might be thinking, oh, yeah, but like, how can that help the body? We're only breathing in and breathing out. If we go back to the beginning of our conversation and we think about the breath reflecting how we feel, there is a point in the body where everything comes into harmony, everything comes into cohesion, where all the major organs are working together. And if that balance was reflected in our breathing, it would be this slow inhale and slow exhale. So when we start coherent breathing, people at the beginning might find it quite difficult. They mightn't enjoy it. They're breathing in and they're breathing out and they're breathing in, but it's like this rhythm that builds up in the body. And all of a sudden, over 3 or 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, the major organs start working in this cohesive way. And that influences the mind. The breath influences the mind. The mind influences the body. So coherent breathing there's been lots of studies on it. The results are really quite dramatic. And it's such a simple way of breathing. But as you described there, it's very much overlooked. I was very lucky to train my 2 professors who are they kind of systemized coherent breathing. But in pranayama, equal breathing, samavritti is what it's called. That's what coherent breathing is. It's just breathing in for the same amount as you breathe out.
I think people can get. I mean, I say I've been meditating for 40 years, and people say, "What type? What?" People can get very caught up in the
Yes.
methodology, and I'm going. No, it's about the place. It's about what you experience. No matter what you do, I don't care. Do you get to a place where you're calm? And whatever you do to get there, my way is not right. It's just how I approach it. Um, but I also think you talked about the busy mind, and people assume, well, you've been meditating for all these years. You sit down in a meeting. My mind goes crazy like anyone else's. You know what I
The
mean? I
wrestling
think the
match
difference.
starts.
Well, I suppose the thing about it is it's I don't have a wrestling match anymore because I sit down, the mind is busy, and I go, well, that's what the mind does. You enjoy yourself. So I stop paying attention to it. That's all. I don't expect it to be different than what it is. I don't judge it. I just notice when I sit down, the mind wants me to get up and run and remind me things. That's okay. You'll do that, and I just sit with it, and eventually it just I go. I'm not going to say the mind quietens. I don't know if it quietens or not, but very quickly, it's not what I'm. My attention is somewhere else. So I describe it to people. It's a bit like maybe I don't know. Maybe if I go over to the kitchen, Sky Television is playing 24/7. I don't know. I'm not in the kitchen, so I kind of view the mind that way. Maybe my mind is going crazy 24/7. I don't know. I don't give it that much attention. I only tune into it when I need it. But I the beautiful thing about coherent breathing and why I really encourage people to try it is because you're not trying to give these people these detailed meditation instructions that you do for an hour a day, cross your legs, grow a beard, do whatever. There's nothing. You're simply just saying, breathe into the count of four. I know what's all the other instructions. No,
That's it.
that's it. And here's the thing, because I say when I started doing coherent breathing, and I do it regularly as part of a lot of practices, but that is I will if I do that for 5 minutes, it's such a mellowing effect on my body and my mind. And I've been already practicing meditation for decades, so it's like I would say it's a really powerful. Don't get caught up in all the things you need to do. If you do this, I think it's so simple. But it goes back to the early part of our conversation of teaching people how to breathe. I know how to breathe, but do you really understand the powerful tool you have?
I think that's a great point because when people start to, like you're describing there, a few minutes of coherent breathing and you feel completely different.
You
So,
do.
so it's trying to help people realize that they have this incredibly powerful tool in them all the time. And
Yeah.
as a reflection of how powerful it is, if we stopped breathing, it would be all over within a matter of minutes. So that's how powerful it is. So I think, and it's like everything, we help people practice their breathing even for 3 or 4 minutes, and they concentrate, even if they don't think about it for the rest of the day. The nervous system is trying to
Mm.
learn how to breathe all the time. So by practicing even a little bit, your nervous system is starting to pay attention. So you're thinking, oh, maybe I don't. Maybe I start to breathe a little bit more like this. So the practice itself, focusing on our breathing, even for a short period of time, starts to influence our breathing for the rest of the day without us even thinking about it. And if people are thinking, oh, well, where do I find coherent breathing, or what do I do? If you go to the homepage, breatheo'neill.com, I have 10 free breathing sessions. People put their email in there, and every day I email them just a 10-minute breathing session. And it's a great, and in there is coherent breathing. And it's a great way just to start to get the idea of practicing your breathing and how much it can change it. I think sometimes for some people, there's so much going on in people's lives. And as you said, they're trying to figure out what type of breathing, what type of meditation. Sometimes it has to be as convenient as possible. So these little 10-minute breathing sessions are a great starting point.
A number of years ago, I trained in MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction, the John Kabat-Zinn practice, where they take you over these 10 weeks. They teach you mindfulness. I got to the end of it. I loved it, but I decided, well, I wasn't really interested in teaching it. But when people ask me to point them to somewhere to learn mindfulness meditation, I point them to it. But the reason I point them to it is not because I think it's more special than any other method. It's because so it's an 8-week program that take people through, is because it's, if I send you away for a weekend, you experience something, you come back to your life. But if you do something over a period of time, and I just love the way they do it. So this idea of having 10 different days of practice, after 10 days, I think you will really have got like that. I would really encourage people to do that,
Yeah, yeah,
because you would really have a taste, like you just have a sense of, I think you would have embodied it, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
After the 10 days, you'd know, this really makes a difference.
yeah. And the beauty of it is they have those recordings for life. So people
Yeah,
often get to day number 10 and they go back to day number one and just keep going and just
yeah,
keep going, and it becomes their little practice. And I think my first book, The Blissful Breath, was all based on this idea that even just 10 minutes,
yeah,
and people struggle to find 10 minutes, but I always point to the average amount of time we spend scrolling on phones, and just just take 10 minutes from that and just listen to the breathing and do some
yeah,
breathing. And even that's enough for somebody. I had these even smaller ones. I had these 2 and 3 minute long breathing sessions, and I had this really. He worked in finance. He was high energy, and he said to me, this guy I knew, and he said to me, every morning I get up, I listen to a 3 minute breathing session. I feel great, and I'm off for the day. So
mm.
everyone finds what works for them, but just investing a little bit of time in ourselves, and it could be minutes, can have a massive, massive return on the rest of our day.
A number of years ago, I did I did a group coach training thing, and one of the things they want us to do was to practice this mini mindfulness. I can't remember what they called it. Maybe they called it mini mindfulness. Maybe that's how I describe it. And it was effectively just like taking like 60 seconds of mindfulness, but you would do it periodically throughout the day. You might do it 4 or 5 times, or every hour, or whatever, set a reminder. And you know the way well, no, I won't say my arrogant mind comes up in the acid design, going, I've been meditating for decades. What's this? So that was my approach. I then slapped myself in the face and said, cop on, you idiot!" And I tried it. And so I had to. There was a little app they gave us, and so and I can't remember how many times during the day. So you had to do these 10 seconds of mini mindfulness. So it would be simple as I pick up a glass of water, and I would go, I'm going to and I would then notice I was holding it. I'd hold the glass of water, a cup of coffee, feel the warmth, holding a pen, stopping the traffic lights. So all throughout the day, you had these things, and you would bring your attention fully to that for 30, 60 seconds or whatever it was. It was
Yeah, yeah,
stunningly impactful. And what I found about it is that I was doing my meditation in the morning, and it was like charging your battery, but this was like a little recharge. It was like, it was because then you go into your busy day, and it was like reminding your brain, here I am,
yeah.
here I am. So even someone stopping at their desk, putting down a phone, and just bringing their attention to their breath for 60 seconds and going, I'll do that again in an hour's time.
Yes, and that's so
Mega powerful.
mega. And what
Mega
I try
powerful.
to teach people is, I think the average person picks up their phone about 150 times a day. So
Really?
I try to say to them, every time you grab the phone,
Wow.
bring
Mm,
your attention to your breath, just even for a few breaths. And even if they
mm.
do it a fraction of the time, that's still going to be
Yeah.
20 times a
Yeah.
day.
Doesn't
And
matter.
as you said, it's just life becomes so much more enjoyable, so much richer. I always feel so much more full of gratitude and thankfulness if I have these little points in the day that just stop me for a
Mm.
second and help me just take a few breaths and realize, okay, okay, now I can continue on.
I've told the story before, but I'll share it again. I was mentoring this female CEO, very successful lady, and we had these calls scheduled every couple of weeks. And so it was a Wednesday afternoon, and we go on Zoom, and how I go, how are you? And she goes, Paul, I'm absolutely awful. She said, I cannot do today's session. I just come on to apologize. You can bill me, but I can't do today's session. And she said, look, she explained what had happened that morning. It's been chaos at home and in the office. One of her kids was sick, and chaos, blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, we'd 90 minutes scheduled. And I said, that's great. I said, there's no problem whatsoever. Don't worry about it. I said, have you got 5 minutes? And she said, Yeah, sure. 5 minutes. I said, I can't do the whole session, but I said, cool. I said, why don't we just meditate together for 5 minutes? I said, how would, she said, yeah, cool, no problem. So I said, yeah, hey, close your eyes. I closed my eyes. And I just off the bat took her through a 5 minute meditation. And when I finished the meditation, I just said, you can open your eyes whenever you want. And I opened my eyes and she remained for a few more minutes with her eyes closed. And I said, how was that? And she said, yeah, that was, I feel so much different. And so we talked, and I said, what have you noticed? And I, she said, what struck me is it was there all along. So I hadn't given her anything. And that's what profoundly hit her, was that quiet was there all the time.
Yeah.
She was mega stressed, but that quiet was there all the time. And that was the aha moment, that she had to stop and notice it. Now, we continued for the full session. I was going, hey, anytime, hang up. It's no problem. No. We continued for, but her, no, but that wasn't my intention.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I suppose believe about breath, about meditation, is that it's not giving you something. It's making you aware of
Yeah.
something that's ever present. And in our busy world, picking up a phone 150 times, it reminds you of that. Uh, I'm conscious of our time flying along, and I want to talk about cold water, if that's okay. Now you're speaking to a devotee, because I have a sauna and a nice tub in my garage. I was in it before before we spoke. I want it plugged in. It's set to three
Yeah.
and a half
Okay.
degrees or
Okay.
whatever. And so many of my friends think I'm absolutely mad to want to walk out and jump into a tub of 3.5 degree water. So can you please explain to them why I'm not mad to want I'm just going to edit this clip, and this guy's an expert. So
Um,
yeah,
so I'm going to begin at the beginning. So when I was, my second book is called The Power of Cold, and it's how
yeah,
to use the cold as a force for good in our lives. And for me, the cold is a breathing practice, because we have to control our breathing when we get in the cold, because what happens, our breathing becomes out of control. It's shocking when we get in the cold. It's painful. It's full of discomfort. And when I was writing the book, I wanted to find, why is there this connection between the breathing and the cold? Where is it coming from? And because for me, the cold is the ultimate teacher of breathing and calmness. Because if we can find calm in the chaos of the cold, then we can really find it anywhere. And this doctor, a friend sent me a link, and this doctor was explaining about our first moments. So we all share this experience where we're in the womb, and then we're born. And no matter where in the world we are, it's the shock of the cold on our skin that triggers our first breath, opens up the lungs, and brings us to life. So from the very beginning of life, there is this intrinsic link between the cold and our breath. And for me, I think why the cold is so important is, many of us spend the rest of our life pushing the cold away. But for us to feel whole, and for our breathing to work as it should, and for us to feel that calm again, we need the cold in our life. And in this part of the world, it's inevitable. So for lots of the months of the year in Ireland here, it is freezing cold. The wind would cut your ears off. The rain is sleeting rain. So for me, it's like the cold is massively important. Either we use it as this force for good in our life, we use it to bring us back to this sense of wholeness, or it becomes this thing that we hate and we run away from. Now, when we do learn to use the cold as a force for good, it has these massive, massive scientifically proven benefits. So it reduces pain in the body, it reduces inflammation in the body, it reduces stress in the body when we learn to use it in a very particular way. It gives us more energy. It boosts our immune system. It gives us more focus, makes us way more resilient, the list is nearly endless of the benefits of the cold, but not just by approaching it anyway. We always have to respect the cold. We always have to approach it with this respect. The cold is such a powerful force, and we can't really force it. It's not like a competition, So I spend a lot of time talking to people about how how do we respect the cold? We make sure that we understand how to approach it. We make sure we understand how long we should be in there, and we make sure we understand how to warm up afterwards. And when we start to disrespect the cold, we start to push it, force it, treat it like a competition, then it can become this dangerous force. Like all stresses, a little bit of stress can be good for us. Too much stress can be detrimental to us. So for people who are thinking, oh, I don't know how you can get into the cold, we all have to face the cold. From the moment we are born, we have to face the cold. Why not learn to use it as something that's good for us? And the breathing is a part of that. So we have to learn to breathe in a very calm way in the cold, to find in amongst the chaos of the cold, to find this long, slow exhale. And when we can find this long, slow exhale, heart rate drops and the body softens. I'm sure you've found that in the cold. After somewhere between a minute and 2 minutes in the cold, the body starts to adapt. And when the body starts to adapt, inflammation in the body starts going down, 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 down. Our immune system starts to rise up as well. And if we approach the cold in this very respectful, very calm way, inflammation in the body can be going down for 6 days afterwards. That's what the science shows. Wow. And if we think about inflammation as both the cause of lots of the problems that we have, but also the result of lots of the problems that we have as well. This control over inflammation is hugely important. So if a person, even after the end of their beautiful hot shower, we should enjoy the hot like your sauna. We should really enjoy the hot. But if they turn it to cold at the end and feel the shock of the cold shower, and just try to focus on the exhale and to bring it under control, because you'd be like this at the beginning. But if you control that exhale, and we can find a slow, calm exhale, the body starts to adapt, and then we're getting all those benefits.
One thing, a couple things I've noticed having done over the years. In the early years when I had it first, and I think I got it maybe around COVID time or something. I have it in the garage now. I used to have it outdoors, and I would remember standing at my bedroom door, freezing cold outside, and I would have to psych myself up, and I'd have to go, "Have you decided to do it? Boom, just do it." I've noticed that as the years go on, it doesn't require that anymore. I tend to just get into it. So I think that has been one of the first benefits for me is that I overcoming the fear or setting the mind, because now I just get into it, which doesn't mean it's not cold. Are there some specifics in relation to how long, how often, how cold? I mean, the tub I have it there goes down to about 3.5 degrees, but it's been very warm here in Ireland for the past week or so, which means you might go out and it's maybe 7 degrees. It just doesn't manage to, in the winter, it'll be down at 3 degrees, no problem. So is there how cold, how long to get these benefits, and how often?
So at the top of our experience in the cold, like you described there, is a really important part of the experience that most people forget about. And that's being really clear in our mind before we get into it about why we are doing it. We have to give it meaning. There has to be a clear intention. So maybe there's something we want to gain from getting into the cold, or maybe there's something we want to release. So for me, sometimes I'm standing beside we have a big ice bath, and sometimes I'm, in my mind asking myself, why am I about to plunge into this freezing cold ice bath? And sometimes it's because I want to be a better father. I want to release whatever tension is there, find a bit more calm. But I think before we get into the cold, in order to keep the mind focused and motivated, we have to be really, really clear on that. Then it comes into the specifics. So our understanding of the cold is becoming more sophisticated. And really, what everyone needs from the cold is different. So how often and how long we spend in the cold varies. So, for example, the research shows us that over a 7 day period, the optimum amount of time in the cold is 11 minutes. That's over
Over 7 days.
7 days. Now, that doesn't mean
Wow.
building it all up and holding it for one day and getting in for 11 minutes. It means the total
Yeah.
opposite of that. It means that somewhere between a minute and 2 minutes regularly in the cold
Mm.
is
Is
really
right.
what we want. So
Mm.
it's, you see so many famous influential people jumping into their ice baths, timing themselves for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, getting out and
Mm.
like they're in bits for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again,
You're
it
too
comes
cold. I've
too cold.
experienced it. Yeah.
So I've worked with, some of the most successful sports teams in Ireland, Olympians, professional athletes. And part of what I do with them is try to educate them again on what is the best way to approach the cold. So if we start at the top and say, okay, I want the most benefits from the cold, then those 1 to 2 minutes a few times a week is all we need. Less is more.
Mm.
We want to get out of the cold feeling like a superhero. The body has
Mm.
adapted. If you get out and your body is adapted, you'll feel warm when you get out. You'll feel energized when you get out. And that's showing you that the body's recovering, inflammation is going down, energy levels are going up. So that's where we want to kind of get out. We don't want to get out of the cold, having spent too long in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that. When you come out, you're shivering for an hour.
Yeah,
I've done that.
yeah,
You've overdone it.
you've
Yeah.
overdone it. So there always is going to
Yeah.
be a bit too much, a bit too, depending on the
Yeah.
person. Now, men and women are different. The science shows us
Yeah.
that women feel cold more than men. There's more cold receptors in the body, and also it depends on the where they are in their cycle. So sometimes they don't they won't feel like they should get into the cold, and we really they have to listen to their bodies.
Mm.
We have to listen to our bodies. So the cold is such a powerful force that there's no pushing. If we think to ourselves, you know what, I'm not feeling up to it today. There's no like it's not like
Mm.
a CrossFit class. We have to shout at
You
yourself,
have
come
to.
on, more. That's not how it works. So we have to listen to our body. And with the temperature as well, there's this thing that happens to the tissue in the body. So the more we spend in the cold over months and years, the more the fat starts to move from being white fat to being brown fat. So brown fat begins to eat up the white fat and use it as the fuel for creating heat and energy. So that changing, every part of us changes because of the cold. That very important change happens in temperatures like from about 12, 13 degrees downwards. So people think it has to be like 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degree. It actually doesn't have to be that cold. Yeah, so somebody is saying, oh, I can't get my ice bath down below 10 grand. The kind of way to very personally know when it's cold enough. If you get in and it feels cold,
Yeah. It's
your
cold.
body has to make the adjustments. It has to start doing all the things that enable us
Mm.
to feel the benefits. So, like many years ago, way before we had our children, my wife Josie and I, we traveled through India. Like sometimes it might be like 40 degrees outside, and we'd go into these old temples, and it had these big brick walls, and inside the old temple felt cool and cold in comparison to outside. Even that change, the body has to adjust to the new temperature. So as long as it feels cold to us, we're getting loads of the benefits as well. But less is more in the cold. Less is more.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not to be forced. I certainly know in the early days, I would have come in and I'd be wrapped up in like an hour later, I'd still be shivering. And yeah, I mean, maybe I was probably just spending too long on it, and now I would use that as an indication. Now, if you're too cold afterwards, you're going to be a little bit cold. You got to warm up, but if you're too cold, you've done too much. Obviously, you've trained. Wim Hof. You've trained Wim Hof, and he certainly has become a bit of a legend. Um, I've seen some of these programs where you'll be in his home, whatever, and he'll take, or whatever he is, and he'll take people up the mountains in the snow just wearing shorts, and they'll do this. Maybe you've done this, I don't know, for like, is it 2.5 hours or something? That's quite extreme. What's going on there to enable people to walk in shorts and up the mountains in the snow and not die from
Yeah.
hypothermia?
So I actually took,
Have you done it? Is my first question
yeah, I've
was.
done it quite a few times myself, and I've taken
Have you?
many, many groups up the mountain as well. Actually, just in January, we took, I think, about 20 people from Ireland, mostly in the UK, to Poland, up these huge snowy mountains. So
Wow.
now obviously, there's preparation to be done. Like it's not that
Yeah.
we grab some random person off the street, strip them down
Yeah.
their shorts, and then drag them up a snowy mountain. Um, but ultimately, if at the top of our cold experience is this question of why we do it, this intention, the mountain is really to remind us how powerful we are. So as we said
Mm.
earlier, we are survival machines. We crave difficult circumstances. We crave harsh conditions. That's why you jumped on your bike this morning and cycled up those mountains near where you live.
Mm.
Part of us
Mm.
wants to feel what it's like to get this physical struggle.
Mm.
Now, thankfully, we've evolved over millions of years to get to a point where we have these comfortable lives, but we still need these experiences of allowing our bodies to feel that ability to survive harsh conditions. So that's underlying the experience on the mountain. So people are trained to use their breathing to find a sense of calm and focus in the cold. So when the body can remain calm and focused on the breath, it can adapt to nearly anything. So up the mountain, it's about 2.5 hours up the mountain. The last time we went, by the time you reach the top of the mountain, Mount Śnieżka in Poland, one of the windiest mountains in the whole of Europe. The winds were about 60 kilometers at the top, and it was about minus 12 degrees. So extreme conditions. And people went 2.5 hours up. We put our clothes back on, and we came back down again. And what people will tell you over and over again is when they were climbing the mountain, because they had been training their breathing to focus on the breath with every step as they went up the mountain, they will tell you that their bodies felt warm going up. Some of them were sweating going up. The minute you get to the top and you're taking pictures and, oh my God, we got to the top, and their
Yeah.
focus is broken, and we put the clothes back on slowly, and we have ways of warming up the body naturally, they'll tell you that as you come down the mountain then, fully clothed, all the gear on, you are freezing cold because the focus is, we're chatting away, the focus is gone. So really what the mountain is teaching people is that if we can stay and practice this, it's like meditation. If we can stay focused on the breath, the body can stay loose and soft. It can endure extreme conditions. The moment we lose the focus and we get tense and we get worried, we cannot deal with that extreme pressure. So it's like a mega meditation all the way up to the top of the mountain. Now, it's not something you do all the time, but it's definitely an experience that shows us how incredibly powerful we are.
Well, Neil, it's been a fascinating conversation. You have two books, you've mentioned them already, The Blissful Breath and The Power of Cold, so people can dig into those. What's the name of your podcast?
The Breathe O'Neill podcast.
Breeder, and if they go into your website, you have a link to that. And I will put all this in the show notes, but just remind people where they can find you, because I mean, I feel like we could go on talking for another hour, because it's what's amazing here is it's so simple. We've been talking about breathing, which everyone knows about, and we've been talking about cold water, which everyone knows about, and yet when you have a conversation with it, it turns into this massive topic of human potential. It's a massive thing. Yeah. So point people to where they can find you, so to explore this more.
Yeah, so you can find me at Breathe O'Neill all over social media and breatheo'neill.com. Niall is spelled Niall, just to add to the confusion. So
I'll put it in the show notes.
breathe with niall.com, and you'll find the 10 days of breathing free breathing sessions there as well.
It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.